What if the zombie apocalypse didn't happen in modern times, but instead in medieval England? There are no guns, there is no military, and there is no hospital or modern medicine. In fact, there is no modern technology of any kind. Just a city built of stone and wood, slowly collapsing into chaos. This is the world of God Save Birmingham, one of the most ambitious indie survival games currently in development. And in today's video, we're going to break down everything we know so far: the gameplay, the systems, the developers behind it, and whether this could become the next big survival game, or just another ambitious project in a very crowded genre. You don't start as a soldier, you don't start as a hero, you start as a peasant, doing maintenance on a church roof. Until something goes wrong, you fall hard. And when you wake up, everything has changed. The city below you is no longer normal, something has spread through Birmingham itself, and whatever it is already too late to stop. Over the last year, God Save Birmingham has slowly gained attention online. Short gameplay clips started circulating across YouTube, Reddit, and social media, showing a survival game that looks very different from what most players are used to. Now, at first glance, it might just look like another zombie survival game, and honestly, the genre is packed with them. But the more you look into what this game actually is trying to do, the more it starts to stand out. Because to understand why people are paying attention to this game, you first have to understand how crowded and how unpredictable the survival genre really is. And that's where things start to get interesting. The survival genre has become one of the most competitive spaces in all of gaming. On paper, it sounds simple. Survive, gather resources, build shelter, avoid danger. But in practice, it's actually one of the hardest genres to get right, because players don't just want survival mechanics, they want a world that feels alive, a system that reacts to the choices, and a reason to keep coming back long after the initial novelty wears off. Over the years, a few games have managed to truly define what survival gaming can be. DayZ started as a mod and completely changed multiplayer survival forever. It introduced something that most games weren't doing at the time: unpredictable player interactions, the trust, and the betrayal. Moments that weren't scripted but happened naturally through systems. Then came Project Zomboid, a game that looks simple at first glance, but underneath is one of the deepest survival simulations ever made. Everything mattered: noise, hunger, infection, fatigue. Even small mistakes could end a long survival run instantly. And despite being in development for years, it built a loyal community because of how consistent and detailed its systems are. Then there's Valheim, a completely different approach. Instead of pure realism or hardcore simulation, it focused on exploration, progression, and cooperative survival. And it exploded in popularity almost overnight. It proved that survival games don't need ultra-realistic systems to succeed, they just need strong gameplay loops and a world players actually want to exist in. But for every success story, there are just as many cautionary tales. And this is where the survival genre gets a little complicated, because ambition alone doesn't guarantee success. In recent years, we've seen several survival games struggle under the weight of expectations. The Day Before is one of the most well-known examples. It generated massive hype before release, promising a huge open-world survival experience. But when the game finally launched, it was met with heavy criticism and quickly disappeared from sales. Then there's Dead Matter, a project that spent years in development, building anticipation through early access updates, and yet struggled to deliver the level of polish and systems players were expecting. Even earlier examples like The War Z showed how quickly a survival game can lose community trust if expectations don't match reality. These games didn't fail because the ideas were bad, they failed because survival games are incredibly difficult to execute at that scale. Everything has to work together: the AI, performance, world design, player freedom, and long-term progression. If even one part falls short, the entire experience can easily collapse. This is why modern survival game players are a little different now. They've been through the hype cycles, they've been through the trailers, they've seen the promises, and they've seen what happens when things don't line up at release. So now, instead of excitement, there's caution. Players don't just want ideas anymore, they want proof. They want gameplay, they want consistency, and they want transparency from the developers. And that's exactly where God Save Birmingham enters the picture. Because instead of relying on cinematic trailers or marketing promises, this game has been slowly showcasing something else: actual gameplay and actual systems, and a very different approach to survival design. At the center of God Save Birmingham is Ocean Drive Studio, an independent developer based in South Korea. They're not a massive AAA studio, and they're not a team known for survival games either. In fact, they're best known for their tactical RPGs like Lost Eidolons, which makes this project feel like a major shift in direction, because moving from a turn-based RPG to a large-scale physics-driven survival game is a huge leap in both design and technical ambition. But instead of hiding behind cinematic trailers, the developers have taken a more direct approach. They're showing the actual game in development, not polished marketing versions of the game, but actual gameplay, systems being tested and systems being refined. What immediately makes this game stand out is its setting. Most zombie survival games take place in a modern city, with abandoned streets, with abandoned police stations, and military checkpoints, and gas stations, and supermarkets, and we've seen that over and over and over again. But God Save Birmingham completely changes that formula. It takes place in 14th century England, inside a medieval version of Birmingham. That one changes everything. That one decision changes absolutely the total dynamic of which you are now going to survive. There are no firearms, there are no electricity, there is no modern medicine, and there is no emergency services. No infrastructure designed for mass survival scenarios. Instead, you are now dropped into a world where survival depends entirely on medieval tools, basic resources, and your ability to adapt to a collapsing society that was never built for this kind of disaster. One of the biggest focuses of the game is its physics system. Instead of survival being menu-based or scripted, a lot of interactions happen directly in the world itself. Furniture can be moved physically. Tables, shelves, carts can be dragged to block doorways. Windows and rooftops can become routes for escape, and tight medieval streets become either safe pathways or deadly choke points, depending on how you use them. This means survival isn't just about what you carry, it's also about how you use your environment. The infected also behave in a way that feels more dynamic than traditional zombie AI. They don't just move in straight lines towards the player, they react to the space itself. They crowd narrow areas, they get stuck in bottlenecks, they push and stumble through each other in confined streets, and they interact with obstacles in their path. This creates situations that feels less scripted and more emergent, meaning encounters don't always play out the same way twice. Beyond combat, exploration, survival itself is a consistent pressure. Players have to manage basic needs like hunger, thirst, fatigue, and injury. Resources are limited, every trip outside carries risk, and every decision matters. Do you feel safe inside? Do you conserve your supplies? Or risk venturing further into dangerous areas in search of better resources? The game seems designed consistently to force those kind of decisions. Taken individually, none of those systems are completely new. We've seen physics-based survival mechanics before, we've seen zombie AI systems evolve over time, we've seen survival games attempt realism in different ways. But again, what makes God Save Birmingham so interesting is how all of these systems are being combined inside a medieval setting. It's not just another zombie game, it's not just another survival sandbox, it's trying to merge both ideas into something unfamiliar. But as promising as all of this looks on paper, the real question is whether the developers can actually bring it all together in a finished, playable experience. And that brings us to where the game currently stands in development. So, where does God Save Birmingham actually stand right now, you ask? At the time of recording this, the game is still in active development. Nothing here is final. Systems are still being built, animations are still being refined, and a lot of what has been seen is still evolving with each new update the developers share. One thing that has helped this game stand out during development is how it's being shown. Instead of staying silent for long periods of time, Ocean Drive Studio has consistently released gameplay footage, developer updates, and system showcases. This gives the player a clearer look at how the game is progressing over time. You can actually see mechanics being improved, AI being adjusted, and systems being added or reworked based on the feedback that players have been giving. Like a lot of modern survival games, God Save Birmingham is planned to launch into Steam Early Access, and for survival fans that usually comes with mixed feelings, because Early Access can go two very different ways. On one hand, you have games like Project Zomboid or Valheim, where Early Access becomes a part of the game's success story, a long development process shaped directly by community feedback. Now, on the other hand, there are projects that enter Early Access with big promises, but struggle to deliver consistent updates or reach their original vision. The difference usually comes down to communication, scope, and how well the core systems are built before the initial launch. And right now, God Save Birmingham sits in the familiar space that many survival games occupy before release, a mix of excitement, yet caution. Players are intrigued by the setting, they're interested in the physics system, and they're watching closely to see how the survival mechanics come together in a real playable world. But at the same time, the survival genre has taught players to be careful with expectations, because ambition alone isn't enough anymore. Execution is everything. So the real question is, what is God Save Birmingham actually going to become? Could it join the ranks of survival games like Project Zomboid or DayZ? Titles that help define the genre and built long-term communities over years of development? Or will it end up closer to the long list of ambitious survival projects that struggle to fully deliver on their ideas? Right now, it is too early to tell. But there are a few things that do stand out. The setting is genuinely unique. The physics system looks extremely promising, and the developers have shown a willingness to share the project rather than hide it. That alone already puts it in a better position than many projects at this stage of development. As always, I'll be keeping an eye on this one as it develops, and if you want, I can do a follow-up when it hits early access, and we can see how much of what we've actually talked about has made it into the final game. If you've enjoyed the video, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more gaming breakdowns and showcases, and let me know in the comments section what you actually think about God Save Birmingham. Is this the next big survival game, or is it just another ambitious project in a very crowded genre? Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the doghouse. Adios.